from the UAE, and maybe what time of day it is as well. Hi, everybody. And if you've joined one of our webinars before, always interesting to see.
Mostly the evening so far.
As the event goes on, Jill and Charlotte are really happy to take questions in the chat box, so do put them up. There are quite a lot of people in the webinar today, so we'll just sort of manage that, and if it gets that there are loads of questions coming through, there will be question time at the end of the session, so we might hold some of them till then. I really hope that you're all planning to stay with us for all 5 days. Like I said, there will be a certificate of attendance for each day, but there is a special certificate at the end of day 5 to show that you've been to all 5 seminars, and obviously that's going to make sure that you become experts in teaching synthetic phonics with Snappy Sounds. There's also a prize draw as well, so we'll tell you more about that as we go on. Well, it's on the hour, yeah, so very many different countries. So once again, thank you all so much for joining us at whatever time of day it is with you. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Gill, Budgell and Charlotte Rance. Both are experts in synthetic phonics. We've worked with them before. They're going to provide you with a fantastic webinar today. And we look forward to seeing you at the end of this. So thanks very much. Over to you, Jill and Charlotte.
Thank you very much. So welcome, everybody. I feel very excited to see so many people coming in from so many different places around the world. And I don't know if you spotted, but Charlotte put in that chat box that it's actually 4:30 here in the UK. We're both in the UK at the moment. But welcome wherever you are. And we're very much looking forward to sharing our 5 days of seminars with you. You can see this is the first one, and just to get you warmed up, I know there's lots of you trying to get into the chat box, but welcome to SSP and SS, and we wondered if you would help us work out what those acronyms are. What does SSP stand for, do you think? And what does SS stand for, do you think? Just to get you warmed up. It's always frustrating when we can't actually talk to you, but any ideas? What does SSP stand for, do you think? All right, we've got some snappy sounds coming in for SS. Well done, that's fantastic. What about, yes, snappy sound phonic? No, but keep going. SSP. What do you think SSP? It could be Snappy Sounds program. Yes, thank you, Radwa. I think that is systematic synthetic phonics. Absolutely brilliant. Well done. So this introduction is about systematic synthetic phonics. We're going to talk about what that is, and we're going to talk about it in relation to Snappy Sounds in some instances, but we're also going to give you some of the general principles of systematic synthetic phonics. This is just a quick reminder of what our week is going to look like. And when we finish, you'll see there's a slide to remind you to sign up for the other sessions if you haven't already done so. So I won't linger on that because there's a reminder at the end. But this is important because today is an introduction. We're going to talk about the key aspects of systematic synthetic phonics, SSP, and SS, Snappy Sounds. But we will come back each day and go back into more detail. So you don't need to worry if it feels today we're gliding over things, it's because we know we're coming back to discuss them in more detail. So what are we going to do in our first session as an overview? We're going to look at these things, have a quick scan over that. We're going to start with some general things about what reading is and where systematic synthetic phonics fits into that understanding of reading that we now have. And then we're going to look at things specific to Snappy Sounds. And then we're going to look at some of the resources to tempt you. I'll be waving some of the things in front of the screen just to tempt you like that. And then we'll finish with a quiz. So we've got a lot to get through. And here we go. Over to Charlotte.
Right. Thank you, Gill. And let's just do a quick check. Everybody can hear me because I turned my mic back on. We good? Jill's nodding. Fantastic. Cool. All right. Have a look at this baby. Isn't it a cute baby? Very lovely, cute baby. Here's a question for you. Let's say we take, maybe it's a cute baby. Yes. Okay. Fair enough. If we took this baby into a library, if we took this baby into a library and we put it in the middle of all of these gorgeous picture books, remembering our favorite picture books from childhood, lots of interesting stories, fantastic vocabulary, is that baby going to learn to read? In the chat box. Okay, some hard no's, hard no's. Only if someone reads to him. Interesting. So why not? What's the problem? Why is this baby not going to automatically start reading? Anyone have any ideas? We all agree it's not going to happen. Sounds, someone has to teach them. They don't know the letter. He needs phonics. He doesn't know how. Exactly. Right. So, hang on. Let's see if I can get my slides going again. Thank you. There we go. Right. So, why does this baby not learn to read? Well, I think the first point that we have to make is that reading is not a biological process. Babies automatically know how to breathe. They know automatically start learning how to crawl, to walk, to sit themselves up. These are our biological processes. Reading, not a biological process. It's an effortful process. We have to learn to do it. It's complex thing to do. We need to take time to actually learn it. For most students, for most children, let's say, explicit, direct instruction is really necessary to teach us how we can make connections between shapes on the page and the sounds and the words and the knowledge we have that we learn around it. How do we map those letters, those meaningless at the beginning shapes, to represent different sounds in different words? Now, reading is no more natural or less natural than learning to fly a plane. So let's say if we put, fully grown adult in a plane and went, okay, fly that, we'd expect them to have a little bit of support before that happens. Understanding how the brain learns to read is the justification for teaching using a systematic synthetic phonics approach for all beginners and for struggling readers, certainly here in the UK, and as we'll see shortly, around the world as well. Now, let's see, there we go. Theoretical underpinning. What's the theory? What's the boring bit? We've read the book, you don't have to. We'll come down to the simple view of reading. Now, the simple view of reading is represented here on the screen. And as you can see, we've got two different broad components. You've got on the vertical, your language comprehension processes, i.e. understanding meaning. This is one of the important things. When we learn to read, we need to learn what we're reading about. We need to know the meaning of the things. Part of comprehension is understanding the meaning. The other part, of course, the horizontal, is the word recognition processes. Now, the simple view of reading states that while language comprehension continues over time, we are always learning new words and new ideas. The word recognition side is a lot more time limited. The earlier we do it, the more successfully, the more easily we can pick that up. A couple of people are saying no sound. Is that just local, or give me a yes if you can still hear me? Please. Okay. All right. If you are having sound difficulties, always a good idea to try logging out and then logging back in again. So if you do have a challenge, do that. But what were we saying? I remember language comprehension and word recognition processes. So we need these two things, but they are equally important. Now, let's add in what we're looking at here. So let's say we've got a child who is poor at word recognition and poor at language comprehension. This child will have a very difficult, if not impossible, time trying to learn to read a word. We know if we don't recognize that the shapes that the letters are making, the shapes of the word, what those sounds represent, and if we don't know what the words mean, we're going to have a challenge. Similarly, if we only teach one side or the other, then we're going to have the same challenges. If you have poor word recognition, so let's say you haven't learnt the mechanics of reading, but you do have good language comprehension, you're going to struggle to read because the mechanical side isn't there. On the other side, if you've got great word recognition, you've done all of that phonics work, you recognize your letters, you can blend, you can segment sounds together, get it all sorted out. If you don't understand what the words mean, you're not going to be successful at reading. So what we're aiming for is that top green section. We want to make sure that the children have good word recognition. They can see a word and know what it says, but they also can see a word and know what it means. And only when we've got those two sides in balance can we say that we've achieved and we've got good reading. Now, whoop, is it being slow or is it being fast? Let's see. There we go. Right. Now, I did mention that here in the UK, systematic synthetic phonics is the most important element within our kindergarten and primary learning to read stages. And research from around the world shows this. So, in the UK, for example, we've had the independent review into early reading. The evidence, they say, is clear. We're teaching systematic synthetic phonics, and it's the most effective way of teaching young children to read. Anyone recognize the flag in the middle? Let's see, little flag test. Center one, who is that? Not the UK in the middle. Oh, got a few extra stars. We got UK on the left, Australia, there we go. So in Australia, the National Inquiry into Teaching Literacy, again, recommends phonics learning, providing systematic, direct and explicit phonics instruction so that children can master essential alphabetic code breaking skills. We're going to come to what those words mean in a minute. And of course, phonics is also there and present in the US as well. And they had a national reading panel, which again concluded systematic phonics instruction makes a bigger contribution to learning to read than alternative programs. So in the first language context, phonics is very much a core part of the curriculums. In an international context, it's grown and grown in popularity as well. And we find now that alongside English language learning, English phonics instruction is becoming more and more common around the world. And I'm sure there are quite a few of you that have some experience of teaching with phonics. So, going to hand you back over to Gill now and let Gill talk to you a little bit about Snappy specifically. Oop, let's check Jill's still there.
That we would be
there we are.
handing.
Yes, there we go.
We didn't explain at the beginning that we'd be handing back and forth, but that's the way we thought that we would share this session. Some sessions Charlotte will be doing later in the week, and some sessions I'll be doing on my own, but we're sharing a few. So over to Snappy Sounds. We've just been talking about Australia and the important research that arises from there supporting systematic synthetic phonics. So I thought it would be useful to share with you the expertise of the author team of Snappy Sounds. They're obviously not able to be with us today, but we have a very impressive author team led by Kristin Anthean. I don't know if any of you know her. through other publications or her academic work. But you can see she has an impressive resume of 35 years teaching experience, as well as academic qualifications. And she's based in Australia. So we really are a very international team. She's also, you'll notice, qualified in special educational needs and disabilities. So we've got this wonderful mix of a practical teacher with all these years of classroom experience, as well as somebody who has academic qualifications in all different aspects. And also we have an impressive couple of series advisors who are practicing speech pathologists. Now, why would we need speech pathologists in our author team for Snappy Sounds? Any ideas in the chat box? Any ideas why we might need speech pathologists? Yeah, thank you. Phonics is sound production. An important part of systematic synthetic phonics is our pronunciation of the letter sounds. And so it's very, very helpful. Yes, correct pronunciation, some lovely ideas coming in here, thank you. Teaching children to enunciate clearly. And obviously these two, Stephanie Evans and Mel Porter, also Australian, have lent us their expertise to ensure that we're really providing you with expert advice and descriptions about how to make the sounds. And we'll come on to how we provide that advice later when we're looking at some of the materials. But you can see we've got this very impressive team, and we were very keen to reassure you that Snappy Sounds has come from this both practical and academic background with this specialist expertise. We're very lucky. So here we are. What is Snappy Sounds? We need to be snappy because already we're a fair bit of time into our session. Well, we already know that SSP, for those of you who are joining slightly later, that stands for Systematic Synthetic Phonics. It's a program, it's an SSE program, and it's designed to make phonics teaching as simple and speedy as possible for us as practitioners, for us as the teachers, but also for the children. And what will the children learn? Well, all sorts of things, which we're going to find out about this week, but these three things listed here are key. We learn about the English alphabetic code. What is that? That's the relationship between the letter shapes, which we call graphemes, the written letters, and the letter sounds, which we call phonemes. It's also about learning how to blend those letter sounds to enable us to read a word. So when we read a word and we see the graphemes, the written letters, we understand what sounds we make that has to match those letters. But it's the same for spelling. It's like two sides of the same coin. So we also need to use that expertise to teach children how to segment those letters so that they can spell. So if they want to spell a word, cat, they can say k, and they know which letter they have to write to represent that sound. And finally, it's how to apply these skills to books so that they can read. We want them ultimately to be fluent and happy and engaged readers. And so ultimately, that's our goal. We're not doing it for its own sake. We're really doing it with this goal in mind. We want children to be able to read and read with great pleasure. And that's our goal. So moving on, a little bit more on what Snappy Sounds is. It teaches, it supports us as teachers and you as teachers, an explicit and snappy teaching routine. Now, Charlotte's going to talk about this either later or in another session, I think. So we try and make things quite systematic for us as teachers so that we don't forget what we're doing, and so that we provide the children with continuity and consistency, which is very important in an SSP program. We want to teach them a mastery teaching sequence. We'll show you what that is. We want to engage them with fiction and non-fiction decodable readers. So it's not just any book that we pluck off the shelf. In these early stages, it's very important that we're controlling what's in the reading books for the children. We teach them and then we give them practice to read. We want to assess what we've taught them, because otherwise, how will we know if our teaching has been effective and where we need to go next? And then we want in Snappy Sounds to support you as well. So we have professional development and teacher support. So that's just some of the things. And you'll see in the crocodile speech bubble that these resources are a mixture of print resources. I've already been showing you some of the books and teachers' resources here as well. We do have print books, but also there's an awful lot of material online. So we have the best of both worlds. We have blended learning. What about pace? How quickly does Snappy Sounds run through the letters and sounds of the English alphabet? Well, we suggest 1 to 4 new GPCs. Anyone help me out here? What does GPC stand for? Does anybody know? Can you put that in the chat box? GPC, because I've used that term here, but I realise I haven't introduced that. Any ideas? GPC. I have used the words. Thank you very much, Teresita. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Grapheme, phoneme, correspondences. So that's the relationship between the written letter and the sound. Now, there's also a scope and sequence which is aligned to a 4-term school year or a 3-term school year. We can be flexible with that, but we offer you a full scope and sequence. And depending on where you are in the world, you may have 3 terms or 4 terms. It's important that we show you how to match to your requirements. It's important that we show you how to fit this material alongside other commitments, because you'll have other programs and other important things about English language teaching or other subjects that you need to be part of. And it's important that we check that children have mastery of the phonics sounds before we move them on. It's not just doing 4 sounds a week and racing through without ever checking that children are competent and have understood. We say, let's begin the reading books really early. As soon as we've taught s, a, t, p, and even maybe just 4 more letters, we can really begin to give children books. Even if it's just to read s, a, m, sam, at least it's a book. It's very motivating for the children. Yes, Anna, 4 sounds a week, ideally. But again, we have to look at what's suitable for your situation. And some schools prefer to take work through into year or grade 2. So we start with kindergarten or reception, as we call it in the UK. And most of the material is reception, kindergarten, and grade 1, year 1. But some schools here in the UK too like to push through into year 2 or grade 2. So again, that's a decision where you can make depending on your situation. Now, the progression, here we go. I talked about this a moment ago. Snappy Sounds has 8 levels. It has 8 levels. And you can see here, the first 4 levels really focus on teaching the short vowel phonemes, consonant digraphs and trigraphs, and then moves on to long vowel phonemes. We do incidentally touch on letter names, but phonics is more about the letter sounds than the letter names. Yes, starting in school at 5 years, 4 or 5 years, we start teaching phonics in the UK. I'm just answering a question from Anna there in the chat box. And then levels 5 to 8, we really focus on looking at alternative spellings. Because although we have 44 phonemes in the English language, there are about 128 different combinations that we can use those letters in to create different grapheme phoneme correspondences. So those are the 8 levels within Snappy Sounds. I don't know if many of you have looked at Snappy Sounds yet, or whether this is all new to you. So I realise there's quite a lot going on here. So what if you wanted to teach those 8 levels over 3 terms in the year, like I think you probably do in Egypt? This is how it would look for you. This is how we suggest you spread the work evenly across foundation, kindergarten, and then through into the 3 terms of year 1. And then you can use some material as extension for year 1 if you've got very quick learners, or you can take it into year 2. So as we're talking about bilingual and ESL learners, multilingual learners here, it may be that you want to go a little bit more slowly and tip into year 2 with some of these more challenging alternative spellings. I hope that makes sense for you. But it is a lot to get through, but you'll be surprised how quickly, once children understand the principles, how quickly they can grasp this. So a little bit more about the scope and sequence. The pace and the progression may vary, and I can see several of you are saying it depends on the context and the learner, and whether the children are bilingual or multilingual or second language learners of any description, and this is true. So the pace and progression, absolutely, you can decide what's right for your children, but the sequence doesn't. The sequence is very precious in a systematic synthetic phonic program. We need consistency and fidelity to the program. We use this term a lot in the UK, fidelity. If you choose this program, then use everything it gives you to keep you on track, to help you be consistent in your teaching. Week 1 of the scope and sequence will be your week 1 of the program. Whenever you choose to begin, you'll know when you want to begin the program. Consistency is key indeed. Someone has just said in the chat box, that's right. And there's not enough of that often in the UK. We see lots of people trying to do different things, but actually consistency is key. We need timely opportunities to practice previously taught GPC. So once we've taught them, we need to give children practice, don't we? We can't just go on to new every lesson. We have to keep dipping back, reinforcing, consolidating and practicing. We need timely opportunities to make use of all the resources. When we do the session, I think it's module 4 this week, on making the best of the resources, you'll see you've got so many lovely things to make the best of. And so we'll help you with that too. And children are presented with decodable texts when they have learned the letters and sounds that appear in those books. We aren't going to expect children to read words that are made up of letters and sounds that we haven't yet taught. So this is why it's really very important to adhere to the scope and sequence. So here's a little example, just to give you an idea of what we might cover in our first 3 levels in kindergarten or reception. So you can see it's quite simple that we do at, p, n, d, g, o. We go quite quickly through these consonants and vowels, the letters of the alphabet, before we then in the second term start looking at some of these other combinations. So you can see we look at, whilst these are 1 letter, 1 sound, s is 1 letter and it has 1 sound. And then you can see in week 12 over here, look, we've got 2 letters, 1 sound. So if it's double S, it still says s, it still represents the sound s. Then we look at adjacent consonants and blending them. Then we look at even 3 letters. Can you see TCH here? 3 letters, 1 sound. We might look then at things like and 2 letters, but 2 different sounds. And you can see that these are some of the basics that we can get through quite early on. I feel like I need to rush on here, otherwise we will not be getting to where we need to be. Somebody has just asked, what about irregular or tricky words? Because obviously in this previous slide, you can see we're already in the second term talking about putting some of these letters together to make words. But what about when phonics doesn't seem to work so well? Well, we have to address that, because obviously some of the words here, you can see this is a lovely resource that I might be able to show you in person as a physical poster, a beautiful big poster. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a lovely poster that you would be able to put up in your classroom. And when you look at some of the words on here, of course we must teach them, because they crop up very frequently in the English language, but they aren't all tricky. So a word like and once we've learnt and, it's not tricky. A word like words like he, be, and me are only tricky until we understand that the letter E can sometimes represent the sound E and sometimes the sound E. So many tricky words are only tricky until the children understand the rule behind them. So yes, this program does very definitely help you to teach high frequency, but also tricky words. Okay, I'm handing back over to Charlotte to talk a little bit about the lesson structure.
Thank you. Okay. I know someone is asking for seeing previous slides, but we will send those out at the end. So just in the interest of time, I'm going to keep going today. So yes, we've talked a little bit about what Snappy Sounds is. Let's get into that a bit more. Gill mentioned that it follows a lesson sequence, and that lesson sequence is a consistent routine. That routine is to go through a process of part one, the warm up. Part two is a mixture of I do and we do. Now, I do is when the teacher is modeling. So when you're modeling new sounds, when you're showing new games, making sure that things are clear and presented to the learners. That's the I do section. We do section is when the parents and the teachers are working together. Not the parents and the teachers, the students and the teachers. Sorry, working together to practice together. So that's guided practice. And then of course, after the I do and we do sections, we move to independent practice. Productivity. Yes, exactly. The you do section. The children being able to work by themselves and use the new knowledge they're acquiring. So as you can see, the lesson structure follows a consistent routine. We start with a warm up that will give lots of nice things. Part two is a working between I do and we do. The teacher models, the teacher supports and guides, the children experiment and try. In part three, then we move to you do, which is that independent um, productive side of things. And then at the end of the lesson, of course, there is a review. Now, you'll notice what it says up here is continual assessment and feedback. And that's absolutely the way of things. It underpins the whole program. So as you work through all of the different sounds, the grapheme combinations, then we end up in a situation where that feedback is happening every lesson. So we remember what we've done before, we practice new ideas, we return, we review, and we reflect. Those are fantastic words. Thank you so much. Consolidation, also a great word. Now, somebody I noticed earlier in the chat box was asking, oh, hello, can I have control again? It's not working. Give me 1 second. Oopa. Sorry, technical. There we go. Back in control. Somebody was asking earlier in the chat box about whether we teach the sound or the visual first. And as you can see here, we have another poster, a lesson sequence poster. Now, this is a really useful poster to keep around in the teacher's room to remind you, but it can also be on the wall of the classroom to help you with that classroom management side of things. So as you can see in the lesson sequence, you'll start by getting ready to learn. And as with everything, it will be a mixture of I do and we do together. You then review what's happened before. We check our memory. If we've got a grapheme that has two different phonemes that go with it, then we might review what we already knew. We'll look at the lesson objectives. Then we begin with the saying and the hearing. Now, as those of you who are English language teachers, English as a second or foreign language teacher, we always know with English, you say the word before you spell it. Why? Because English spelling is crazy. So in that same way, we would start with the sounds and then we would move on to the writing and the reading and the spelling side of things. So there we go. So it's a teacher-led approach, which involves teaching, demonstrating, guided practice, understanding checks, and of course, independent practice as well. Now, here's an example of how that works. And I've got, like Gill, I've got a lot of nice things nearby. Yes, so you're right, absolutely. Samira, you in the warm-up part, you'll make the review as well, previous lessons and other things. So here's an example here of one of our teaching cards. Now, I love these things. Why? Bigger than my head. I can hide behind it. Very nice. Nice and clear for front of classroom use. And we've got a sound. Well, we've got a grapheme that represents a sound. We've got a picture that supports it. But most excitingly, you've got the back of that. And well, I'll bring it into my camera a bit, but you can see on the screen, this is the teacher's best friend. It is a step-by-step lesson routine, guiding you through step by step. So that previous poster that we saw of the lesson sequence, step by step information and guidance down here. So you'll be able to give them a reminder of how to say the sounds. You've got the progression bar at the bottom, so you know where you've been, where you're going. You've got your extension ideas over there. Pre-prepared decodable word lists. So if you want to do spelling, you've got all of your fun activities and ideas on here, and there's even more support. And there we go. And they do come in a digital version as well. So yeah, you can work with the physical or the digital, as Gill was saying earlier, best of both worlds blended. Now, in year one, there's a little bit more. Obviously, at this stage, the learners have learnt a bit more. They have much more of a grounding. They've covered all the basic phonics. If you remember, they've got the majority of the sounds sorted. So here we've got some additional different things and part of the lesson plan. We start, where's everything going wrong? Yeah, we add in a few extra steps. We move it around. So you'll notice that we've got hear it, see it, say it together so that we can spend more time on writing and reading. You can get those cards from whoever your local Macmillan person is. It varies depending on who you are, but if you talk to your Macmillan rep, and we will be sharing out your contact details, just ask them, how do we get Snappy Sounds? And they will love you forever. Okay, so yeah, few differences and a bit of extra writing, because at that stage they've got a bit more information. Now, few things that you do need to know. You'll notice that there are a number of different little notations that are used around. We've got slashes in there that show the different phonemes, so we know that we're talking about the sound, not the grapheme. For the teachers, there are also references to the International Phonemic Alphabet as well. So if you, like me, writing code, is what my students call it, or reading code, then you've got that point of reference there as well. We mentioned earlier about the need for not only word recognition, but language comprehension as well. So we teach suffixes, common suffixes, as part of the sounds as we learn them, and those will be denoted with a dash beforehand. Underscores are used to indicate where graphemes are most likely to be found in a word. So for example, here we can see on the screen, we've got CK. Where do we find CK in English words? It's typically at the end of the word. So we've got the little underscore at the beginning to show that that's a word end. The same thing, for example, with the combination KN. Like no. Well, it's not even a combination, is it? Because it's not cano, is it? It's cano. No, it's no. So the grapheme for n, which is the KN, will have the little line there that symbolizes where that's going as well. And you'll notice that we also have teaching cards which introduce us to those consonant, vowel, consonant combinations, blending words together. So we've got a lovely example of the frog here. So we've got 4 unique sounds, f, r, o, g, and then we put them together, frog. And there's your frog, and that's your consonant, vowel, consonant setup. Right, Gill, off you go.
Well done. Thank you, Charlotte. I think really I don't need to say very much more, because I think what Charlotte's just done for you is to show you that actually Snappy Sounds has all these beautiful, rich print resources. So she's been talking about the wonderful teaching cards. There's one which is dash, which she was just talking about, IGH. And then you've got the very simple one with the 1 letter, 1 sound, and then obviously I just had to dip down, but I'm back. They're beautiful cards. They're A5 in size, and they're laminated. They're quite strong. So if you do want to use them with the children, then that's absolutely fine. But obviously yes, Charlotte's beautifully demonstrating that they're quite bendy, but you've got those notes so clearly on the back. This is really unique, I think. This is a real, really good support. I find it so. She's also intimated, I did show one earlier, that we've got these beautiful posters that can go up on the wall. This one is sounds and letters. It's very hard to show you on my small screen, but just to let you know that there are these poster packs, and we don't put them on the wall just so that children ignore them, obviously, or that we use them for our own support. We want children to be using these resources around the classroom. We have some very simple little flashcards. So if we want to do speedy sounds, then we can use the little flashcards. There's no clue, there's no picture clue. There's just this sort of little logo that links it to the right level in Snappy Sounds. And then when you turn over, it's just the word, because why don't we have pictures? Why do we tend not to have pictures in an SSP program? Does anybody know? Why no pictures? Why no number 6 here? Yes, reading words. We want to see if the children can remember what we've taught them. It isn't visual. It's about understanding the representation of the grapheme. Thank you. Yes, some great answers coming in here. It's not about guessing from a picture. It's about decoding and knowing those letters. So that's why we keep those very simple. We have nonfiction. This is a level 5 book about beans. And we will tell you much more about the decodable readers later in the week. But just as a little sort of guide, you get it's reading time and some ideas of what to do before, during, and after reading. And then it picks out the high frequency, tricky words. Practice, say the sounds. Read these words all before you start reading the books. And look at these beautiful pictures. I don't know if you can see that there. So we have photographic books. We have things like the Spooky Sporty Party. So we have fiction books too. So lots of lovely books for your children to enjoy. But also, of course, in print, we have teachers' books. And we have an assessment folder, a separate assessment folder, because we take this very, very seriously, tracking children's learning. And these again inside here, which we'll tell you about throughout the week, these are very substantial laminated cards. So you take them out of the folder and you can use them as little tests so that you know that the children have understood. So you can see there's all this print material. But what about online, I hear you say? Well, that slide really was just showing you some of the things I've already shown you here. Oh, we didn't mention these cards. So this is one from level 4. These are per level and we call them the placemats. And on one side we have just the letters, And on the other side, we have the letters with the little illustrations. So these can be on children's desks as they're working, as their support. They can refer to this to support them with their spelling. So we find these very, very useful. They're about A4 in size. But what about online? We've talked about the decodable readers. I'm going to have to rush on, I think. Online, we have all sorts of materials. Most of the things I've shown you are also available online. So we have audio and video demonstrations of the phonemes, of people speaking. We have photos of a mouth so that you can be sure how to coach the children to pronounce the sounds. We have links to the teaching cards and photocopiable tiles that you can print out so that the children can have little separate tiles with the letters on so that they can mix and match them to spell words. There are all sorts of teaching tips, independent practice activity sheets that you can download and use for practice in that practice and apply section of the lesson. And then there are the decodable reading books online. So here's an example. I rather rushed over the chart, but we have 80 decodable reading books across the 8 levels of Snappy Sounds. So we've got plenty for you to give the children to really get them excited. Here is an example of one that is online. So you've got the audio, you can flip the pages as if it's a book, but you could put it on a big screen if you prefer to do it as a whole lesson rather than a group. You could do it as a whole lesson and then give the children the book to do a guided reading session. There are lots and lots of ways that you can use this material. Here is a very important part of Snappy Sounds, which again, I think is more unique. It supports us as teachers. So if we want some professional development, and I'm guessing all of you do because you're here joining us this evening, you can see that this is free. This comes with the material, so it's free. You don't have to buy extra training. And you can see if you're thinking, oh gosh, I need to remind myself what is write it, read it, spell it. What is part 3 of that lesson that Charlotte was talking about? You can click on a very short video. They're just a few minutes long online and remind yourself. If you can't remember what a decodable book is and how you should best use it, there'll be little mini videos to support you with that. Really, really fantastic opportunity. Oh, there we are. Over to Charlotte once more. Thank you.
Next. Now, yes, won't say too much more about that, but we'll move on to a little bit of the summary there. We've got a few people saying can't hear. Is it my mic or is it your speakers? If you can hear me, give me a yes. Double check. Yep, good. Okay. All right. So a summary then, and then we've got some time for some questions, and so many questions have been coming in the box. So why are we using Snappy Sounds? Well, a lot of people have been asking, you're familiar with other synthetic phonics programs, systematic synthetic phonics, SSP. Systematic synthetic phonics is a methodology. It's a methodology. So a lot of the other phonics programs out there follow SSP. As we've seen, SSP is the curriculum in the UK, in the US, in Australia. So in first language countries, that is the syllabus. What's different is the materials. So why do we want to choose Snappy Sounds? Well, you've had a bit of a brief overview. I've shown you my favorite thing, the teaching cards. I slightly obsess over them. They're amazing. But what we have hopefully shown you today is that these are books who are written and developed by educational experts, not only drawing on phonics, but drawing on speech pathology as well, helping to support that. It is a fun and multi-sensory way of learning. There's so much you can do with it. Lots of audio, video or visual support, books and games and fun ways and ideas and activities that you can do. They are bespoke, high quality decodable readers, and we'll talk so much more about the decodable readers this week, but I quite love them. You've got hybrid support. You don't just have the print physical, you've got the online support as well. And I think what makes it really, really unique is the useful built-in free training resources which will help you to develop your phonics teaching skills as well. Okay, we are going to come to the questions in the chat box in a minute. Let's just quickly check if you have been paying attention. So, Jill, do you want to run through these 6, or do you want me to do these 6 and you do the other ones?
I don't mind. I don't mind. You can carry on if you'd like to.
Okay, well, I might as well while I'm here. You do the next ones. All right, so in the chat box, what does SSP stand for? Oh my goodness. Beanna's in there already. Yes. Systematic synthetic phonics. All right, a phoneme is? Number two, sound. There we go. Brilliant. A grapheme is a letter shape. Yeah. Let's call it a letter shape. It's a representation, a visual representation of that sound. Okay, how many GPCs are taught in the first 3 levels? Does anybody remember? Oh, there was a close answer there. It's 44. 44. 44. Not just 4. 44 for a week. True or false? Following the sequence of snappy sounds is essential. True, absolutely true. And that is the same in all synthetic phonics programs. You've got to follow that sequence. We've got to build up the most frequent and most common sounds and then move on to the, let's call them outliers. A lot of people have been talking about the g in girl and the g on giraffe, which isn't a g at all, it's a j. Well, the most common g gets taught first. Only after we've taught g do we then move on to saying sometimes in English this sound is not g, it's j. All right. Decodable texts, A, B, or C. What do we think? We've got a B. We've got a B, 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 B. Yes, you're all right. All right. Those decodable texts should only use GPCs that have already been taught, plus a few tricky high frequencies. Ms. Budgell?
Thank you. Very nicely done, Charlotte. Some people may have thought that the question about how much is taught in the first 3 levels, the answer may have been 48, because yes, there are 44 phonemes, but actually it said GPCs. So we do actually, I think, teach more like 48 in the first 3.
Distinctly possible. There's over 120 of them in the course altogether. So
absolutely, yeah. So well done, those of you. Anywhere between 44 and 48, I think you can still say you're correct. So question 7, Snappy Sounds includes how many decodable readers per level? I don't know if I really helped you with that, but I flashed through a chart. There are 10 per level, but 9 plus 1 revision. So you can have a mark if you got that right. In question 8, some people are racing on here. High frequency words are always tricky. True or false? True or false? False. Well done. False. Some are tricky until the phonic rule or the GPC is taught. Otherwise, that's not true. Number 9, sort the lesson structure into the correct order. This relates back to Charlotte's session. So we have warm up, yes, then I do, we do, yes, and then you do. Did anyone say you do? Well
Yep.
done. Yes, and review. Thank you. Well done. Well done. And the final question, the underscore tells us that there is always, in this example, that's something.
Yeah, ending with, there we go.
Yes,
Someone said it.
yes, yes. Well done. The underscore tells us that there are going to be some letters before the CK, because CK usually always comes at the end of a word or in the middle of a word in English. Well done. I think probably most of you got that very well done. And remarkably, you must feel exhausted.
Still have a bit of time for questions.
So,
Amazing. So if you
please
do
do.
have any, jump in the box. And what about middle sounds? They're all in there. Don't worry. Don't worry. All of the sounds are in there. One thing I will say for Snappy Sounds is obviously in English, we've got 44 sounds of English. We've got over 120 ways of writing those sounds down, different combinations. Each sound has multiple opportunities and possibilities because, hey, let's face it, English is crazy. Yeah, so one thing that is really, really good about Snappy Sounds, it actually covers more of those graphemes than most of the others. I'm hesitant to say all, but I actually do think it is all of the other systematic synthetic phonics programs. All right, how are we doing? Any questions coming in yet?
Yes, I saw somebody was asking about phonological awareness, and that's a great question because in the past, systematic synthetic phonics have included a lot of what we used to call phase 1 work, which was about phonological awareness. It has now been deemed by the research that whilst that's critical for early language development, it isn't absolutely part of teaching systematic synthetic phonics. So whilst we recognise that's really important for little children, particularly bilingual or multilingual children, it isn't part of the phonic programme anymore. It's not part of our programmes that we offer. But I hope that's clear. It's not that it's not important, it is. Any more questions that you think I think I saw a question about what about those who can't keep up, and I did put an answer in the chat
I
box.
was looking for that as well.
Yeah, and
I
think
saw that question as well.
I
What
think
did you
what I
say?
answered, I just said that what we hadn't picked up on was that at the end of every level, there's some review lessons.
Yes.
So you can either use those lessons to extra consolidation for those children that you feel need it, or you can say, well, all children will need those review lessons.
And I think it's also worth mentioning that in your assessment folder as well, you've got a little section here which is additional unseen materials as well. So if you need to go back and do new tests or try something out, like the same ideas with a different text, you've got some options there in your assessment pack as well.
Yeah. Super.
Any more for any more? I guess we really maybe have time. Is there any information of pre-K? Right, okay. Anne-Marie, don't worry if you missed the session. Make sure you're registered for the rest of the week. This today was the overview, and we will be going into much more detail throughout the rest of the week. So I will be leading the session tomorrow, and as you can see, we will be looking in more depth at what systematic synthetic phonics is and what we need to do to teach it. Later on in the week, we'll be exploring, Gill will be exploring what phonics leadership looks like in schools. We've got umpteen sessions coming up, and you won't have to miss anything. All right, Gill, do you want to set them a little homework challenge?
Yes, we thought just to keep you busy. We're very much hoping that many of you come back tomorrow for Charlotte's session and for my session later in the week. But if you have registered for tomorrow, then, and if you want a little bit of homework to prepare, maybe just have a look at your understanding of these terms: grapheme, phoneme correspondence, blending.
Don't tell us now.
No, don't tell us now. This is you to double check. Ready for tomorrow. Segmenting and tricky words. Oh, Llama sessions registered for all 5 sessions. Fantastic. Wonderful.
Yes.
So if you want a little bit of homework, then do have a look at those terms and make sure that you're really au fait with what those mean.
Teachers love
teaching.
homework, don't they?
Yes.
All right, Amanda's back. Hi, Amanda. We missed you.
Hi both. Thank you so much. That was super session. Thank you for all your fantastic comments and also your questions and your interactions. We will be sending an email out within the next 24 hours. So before we start again tomorrow, and tomorrow is at 3:30 GMT.
Yeah, I was going to say
bringing
that.
it forward a little
Early
bit
start.
early. The rest of the week starts at 4:30 GMT. But you will be getting the presentations. You'll be getting a link to the webinar, which you can share with colleagues and watch again, and also details of how you can actually have a look at the resources. So thank you. Oh, and I just was going to say as well, if your question hasn't been answered today, or you would like to raise a specific question with either Charlotte or Gill, then if you email international.curriculum@macmillaneducation.com, and you will get this email address in your follow-up email, then just email us and then we'll do our best to answer the question. Maybe we can drop a few sort of questions and pointers in a separate email, so we're capturing everything.
Yeah, or
So
maybe
thanks.
even pick them up in the later sessions
Yep,
this week as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So thanks very much indeed, Charlotte and Gill. Very informative as ever. Thank you everyone for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the day wherever you are in the world. Thank you all.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.